All right, so basically, when a connection or a is triggered, we decided that yes, they get very sad, they withdraw, right? So what do? What's the solution? Is get them to talk and acknowledge, right, their emotional charge. You see that's in bold for a reason. And sometimes, remember when that connection-oriented person is hurt, and you say, "What's the matter?" What do they say?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I'm fine.
Very good. Perfect. Right? So then you gotta really, really keep. I mean, it's a lot of work sometimes, depending on how heavily they're triggered, right? And then, I remember I mentioned this to you too, and connection-oriented person actually needs to be touched. Like put your hand on their leg and say, "No, I really care. I really want you to tell me." I mean, you have to draw it out of them, okay? You have to really do that, and they need it, and they need to know that you love them, right? And you're not going anywhere. And they need all that reassurance and everything before they're ever going to be really, you have to create all that for them.
Yes.
Because they're triggered now. This is a connection-oriented person that's triggered. So they need a lot before they'll even open up to talk to you. It's really hard if you're a cause-oriented person, but let's just say, hopefully you're at least a communication-oriented person, and you're willing to do this, even if you are cause-oriented. You love this person so much, you're willing to do this for them. If you really love somebody, you may be married to somebody like that. Wouldn't that be? I mean, you want to make it work. Your child, whatever, your in-law, whoever it is, your sibling. You're not going to just throw them away, so what are we going to do? We're going to have a miserable life together? Hate seeing each other? No. So it's just all about love and connection, okay? And they need a lot. They really need you to have compassion. They need all that reassurance. Let me know that, our love's going to grow stronger and stronger, and they need all that, and then they will start to talk. And then what are you going to do? Fully listen.
Yeah. And acknowledge.
First, fully listen. And what I wrote down here, you'll see it, it's at the bottom. I made that in bold also because it's so important, is do not try to solve their problems, right? Bless you.
Bless you. Excuse me.
Okay, and you don't want it, anybody bless you. When anyone is triggered, you can't, the worst thing you can do is come up with solving their problem and fixing it and giving them advice or telling them what you would do or whatever. It's just not the time to do it, not until they're not triggered anymore. And if you do a good enough job of listening and fully being present and acknowledging them, and they feel better and they're like brighter and they stop crying and they're there, then you can. And they may ask you, what would you do? But not when they're when people do that with me and they're heavily triggered and they're like, what would you do? And I'm like, I say, well, tell me more about it. Because they're still triggered. And as long as they're in a triggered state, the truth is they really can't hear anything you say anyway. Because they're, they have a lot of mental mass around them. So you can't teach anyone anything when they're triggered. You'll not get through that wall. I don't even care if they're connection oriented. They can't hear you. They're triggered. They're not themselves. They're in another state, right? And they can't hear you. And that's what people like to do. They because out of love, right? It's like, I'm going to, give you some great advice, or I'm going to teach you what you should do when this happens. That is not the time to do it. Not until after you fully acknowledge them. Extremely important.
So the best thing to do then is to listen for the most part, right?
Oh, I'm
Listen,
telling you.
Listen. I have to
Yes.
tell them, my head is to say, Kim, what do you have to do? Listen.
Uh-huh.
I've been really working on that since
Good.
this. Big time.
Awesome.
Big time. And acknowledging, but listening. Yeah, this has been very helpful.
Isn't it?
Oh.
It has been for me too. In fact, I was proud of myself yesterday at work, in the lobby, a lot going on. I had a client in front of me. I was tracking her, and it was a phone call from me. I'm at the front desk, and our receptionist was like staring bullets at me, and even my client was going, "She's," and I'm like, "I'll acknowledge her when we're done talking." Not like that, but I just said, "Yeah, finish your sentence." And it felt really, really good.
Wow.
And I was more focused on
Yay.
what she said, and the phone call waited, and I really think the client felt special.
And you made her special, right? I mean, who doesn't like that?
It was a little personal success.
I love
thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I love it. Okay, let's go over cause-oriented person when they're triggered. Our favorite people. No. They're just harder. It could be harder though. It could be harder when they're triggered. It's hard. Depending on what your orientation is.
Yeah.
Especially if you're connection-oriented. That's really a tough combination.
Yeah.
Okay? So you'll see that they get pissed quick, right? They're mad. Unlike, remember we just talked about the connection-oriented person, it takes a really long time. These people are quick to get upset. They are quick to anger, right?
Mm-hmm.
They get irritated, and they ridge, meaning they create like, they don't talk. Do you ever be around somebody like that? Just pissed off? They don't talk. And you'll be talking to them and they just act like you're not even talking to them, like you don't even exist. Hello? Oh, I'm really good at it. I'm terrible. I do it really well. And of course, very much unlike a connection-oriented person, they do not want to be
Touched.
Thank you.
I think you're connection oriented.
Well, of course I have some of it, thank God. I'd be a monster if I wasn't. And if you can recall a time being with somebody, remember they're cause-oriented and they're triggered. And the connection-oriented person makes this big mistake because it's what they want, right? And you try to give people what you want.
Right.
And that connection-oriented person goes to that cause and any kind of touch, definitely not a hug, they will go ballistic. Who were we just talking about?
It just happened to me with him, and he screamed his whole face
There
turned
you
bright
go.
red. He's like, "Whoa."
Don't you ever touch me, do you get that?
And I
Oh,
just
wow.
I went like this.
No.
Like, it's bad. I mean, it's really bad.
HR, hopefully.
I need to start documenting more.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I'm in HR and you do.
Yeah, we'll definitely address some of this. But you're gonna learn some things though, so let's not be surprised let's be open to maybe it could get better. Because remember, it's just gonna be another person with a different hairdo. So it's all about you, right? So we wanna learn this, I'm telling you, you want these tools
I do.
too, right? Yes, that's why you're here, there's no flinky dink, right? Oh, look at that. So you can all identify with that, right? So again, and it's hard with a cause-oriented who's triggered because they're ridged and they're just, that's a hard wall. I always kind of see it like a wall. That's a hard wall to get through, right? And what you need to do, the only way to come out of this is you have to talk. That person needs to talk and they need to be acknowledged. And that's how they'll get better.
But how about if they're, like, say if I were to talk to him,
Yeah.
and he's saying things that I don't believe are true, like say if he's like pointing his finger, doing this thing at me,
Mm-hmm.
you've done this,
Right.
and you're saying acknowledge him.
Well, wait. Okay, if someone is doing that, first of all, I would tell them to put your finger down
Yes.
and do not do that. Because now what you're gonna do is match his orientation, right? Okay, so I'm not gonna anybody lets him, I don't know if there's another nurse or somebody else on the staff or whatever that does that, he just has no respect for them. He will chew them up and spit them out and do it to them over and over again because they don't know how to protect themselves. Another person who knows, I'm dealing with, a triggered, cause-oriented guy. So I need to get,
Okay,
Very
because
cause.
he doesn't do that to the guys. He's done it.
well, of course, he can't get away with it. They wouldn't put up with it. You don't have to put up with it either. I'm 5'2". I don't put up with it from anybody. That's my sister.
Yeah, and let them know you can handle it. Say,
There you
well,
go.
I see you're angry and, I don't appreciate you pointing your finger at me and whatever.
Or do not point your finger at me.
Correct.
Because that's what they can hear.
Yes.
If there's show of any weakness or anything like that, they'll just gobble you up.
Mhm.
So it's like, do not point your finger at me. You don't talk to me I don't speak to people like that. I don't allow anyone to do that. So what you wanna do is get cause. And I would end the conversation right there. I wouldn't even
Yeah.
continue a conversation. There is no communication going on there.
Right.
It's, you got a triggered guy and you just kind of just said, do not put your finger at me
And I did it more.
and exit.
Okay.
And that guy, you watch him gain respect for you, and plus he won't do it. But what they need, a cause-oriented person, they really need to feel that you can handle their anger.
Mm.
And this is really hard to take sometimes, especially if it's directed at you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hardest thing. Somebody's really angry and they're angry at you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so it takes a lot of cojones to, you know, I mean, you gotta like prepare yourself, broaden those shoulders, stand up straight, and you're gonna get hit. It's just like a boxer or something. He's going to get hit. You know you're good, but stand there and take it. The cool thing about a cause-oriented person when they're triggered, if you do that and let them vent, they will recover so quickly. They're the kind of people, and I'm sure you probably all know people like this, that when they're angry and they spew off, all of a sudden they're fine, and you're like,
They're done.
and you're messed up to no end, right? I mean, I've had this happen, right? You're totally crushed, and they're like, hey,
Thanks.
I feel
Feel
better.
better.
I'm good, everything's good.
Glad we got that man.
Yeah, I'm happy, okay, good, glad I got that out. Needed to let you know that. And you're just, that is hard.
I've
That is
experienced that
so,
at work.
isn't it?
Yeah.
I have,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, but if you can become cause-oriented, not a triggered cause-oriented person, but a cause, and let them know that I can take it. You'll only have to take it for them, and I'm gonna tell you, the person's gonna change. The beauty is that you're gonna reap the benefit that they're not gonna be triggered anymore. So that screaming, yelling, whatever it is they're doing, acting out in their triggered state is going to cease. Once they vent, they're done.
It's so true.
Right.
They're over it.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're back to just being cause-oriented.
I think you can gain their respect too if you can take it. I think
Yeah.
to an extent, maybe.
But there's
In the workplace,
there's a fine
anyway.
line, there's a fine line of, like you said, of when if you're taking it versus getting abused, like we were talking about earlier, about the person who, you know, like that person who you said you would exit, the one about the dying, you know,
Right,
and the
right.
person's like, well, what the fuck do you think I'm feeling? You know,
You see-
it's-
I'm sorry. I don't
Go
mean to-
ahead.
I'm sorry.
Finish your sentence, go ahead.
That was my personal life. This particular situation I'm talking about was my workplace. And I want to say there was a little bit more professionalism in the workplace, if that makes any sense.
No, I understand.
I had someone call me on something and
Mhm.
she was a president and she was pissed
Mhm.
and I was turning hot and I was red. And I let her get it out and I acknowledged that she was
Mhm.
right and I was wrong
Mhm.
and how could I fix it. And I had never experienced anything like that. I made a huge mistake and she came to me on it.
Mhm.
But now I have a respect after that because I
Mhm.
listened, I acknowledged,
Right.
You didn't crumble.
and I accepted it.
Responsibility.
Yes. I don't know where it came from, it just came from inside this
That's wonderful.
connection person, you know, but I don't know, something inside me, I have to listen to this woman. I'm gonna have to take it. But it was at the workplace, so it was a little different, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and we pick and choose when we're gonna take it, right? I mean, this
Well,
isn't a scenario where you want to work with that person who's triggered, where you care about them.
yes.
You wanna improve your life by improving the relationship, cause some people, we don't wanna have,
Yeah.
you know, like your guy.
Yes.
Although you do have to have a relationship with it.
Yes, but you don't ever need to take abuse.
No.
Ever. Ever.